going on, everybody? You are live with Osiris. Welcome to the Author's Lounge. The world is filled with storytellers, and I, along with my guests, are here today in the Author's Lounge to help educate and inspire the young generation of writers and creators. Now, my guests are professionals in publishing, writers from a wide range of formats, and successful entertainers. They will provide beneficial advice on what to do and what not to do on your path to success. So, without further ado, I'll present to you our next guest. Let's go. So I got a wonderful guest today, and my man here, I met him through social media, but it was interesting in how we met because I don't know how we necessarily connected, but he had been showing me and my page and some of the authors on my page just so much love and support, and I was doing the same on his that I just hit him up and in hopes that he would be cool enough to, joined the show and like just easily said, "Yeah, I'm down." So cool. We're gonna hop right into it. So I present to you a gentleman who is not only a writer. His writing expands over decades. He's been doing this since he was a young child. He's an author of the not, he's an author of the horror genre. But aside from his writing, which he will talk about, he was also spent 10 years on the Food Network, so he's into the culinary arts. He was also an actor. He did theater for a number of years. He's also written stage plays, comedy skits. My man gets down. So without further ado, I present to you Miguel Garcia. How are you doing today, good sir?
I'm doing great, Osiris. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, man. So I'm really happy to be able to just when I get to meet people and get to hear their background and hear how they contribute their love for their art to the world. So, man, you've been doing this since you were a kid. What got you into writing in general?
All right. So when I was a kid growing up in Mexico, we didn't have podcasts. We had radio shows. Essentially, I would listen to these radio shows that were like telenovelas, just kind of, in an audio format. And they had different sound effects and all the dramatic elements that you can expect. So that got me into writing and creating my own, small scripts with my sisters, just messing around as kids. And eventually, one of the babysitters I had told my mom that I was, a pretty good writer. And I thought I was just making up some, funny stuff, but turns out it was an act.
Yeah, and an act that has lasted for years and is still going strong. What has
Yeah.
you so intrinsically motivated to continue to create just stories just through your art of writing?
So I went through a really long period of time that I didn't write. It was like the ultimate writer's block from like 17 to when I was like 34. When I moved to Florida, it kind of everything changed for me because I didn't know anybody here. And everything I was trying to do creatively was just like there wasn't much in the scene of like improv or comedy, which is what I was used to in Chicago. So I kind of sat down and said, what can I do that nobody can say no to? And well, I went back to writing.
Mhm. Nice, nice. And then ever since then, I'm sure you managed to find a flow.
Yeah, it started with just one novella, and that novella sprung off into four full-length novels that just kept bringing on different characters, different dilemmas for my characters to face. And I wrote my first series through the pandemic, basically.
Yeah, man, the pandemic changed a lot of people. It
Yeah.
either like put unfortunately it slowed a lot of people down or it made people speed up in a time where it was going slow. And so, a lot of creative people came into their own during that time frame. And it sounds like you definitely benefited from that. And so your book series, we got to talk about it, guys. I know you do horror and I'm a horror writer as well, but it's always interesting to meet another horror writer and getting into the mind of it. So I got to check out your work. But if you don't mind just kind of breaking down what your series is about and how people can find your books.
Sure. So my series was called The Raven's Conjuring. It's a four-part book series that takes place in a city called Whispering Pines. And at the heart of it, it's about a young woman's resilience through the darkest parts of her life. Like everything thrown at her, she has to get through it because that's just the spirit that she has. She's a fighter through and through. And the entire series covers about 40 years of her life, but also over 100 years of lore within the city of Whispering Pines.
Oh, that sounds good. And so, like when you're writing, and you don't have to give away any of the story plots, but when you're writing horror, like how do you get into that mode? Some people write in the dark. Like for example, like for myself, I'll get real crazy with it sometimes and get up like at 3 in the morning in darkness and write with creepy music playing to put
Yeah.
me in. I sometimes spook myself out and I stop doing it. But like for you, what's your process look like?
Pretty similar. I find the quiet hours the best hours. Like I wake up and a little groggy, but fresh, full of ideas.
Yeah.
So I turn on the computer 4 a.m. cup of coffee. I listen to dark classical music. So
Hmm.
some of the greats from years and years ago, their music just kind of infiltrates into the story itself.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I bet your stuff is freaking scary, man.
At times, yeah.
Yeah. So like so some of the feedback, right? I'm sure you have a series, so of course there are posts that you found some great success and people wanting to continuously hear your story. And with that, what are some of the responses that you receive from people who read your work?
Some of my favorite responses are the fact that young women tend to relate to the character Morgan, the protagonist. They say that I write women very cleverly and smart, not just, thrown in there for having a female lead. For
Right.
me, it's my favorite part of doing it because I think it's kind of fun to torture a female character versus a male character that we expect them to just kind of be, brave from the get-go, and building up that woman's bravery is what really excites me to write the books the way I do.
That's awesome. And so it sounds like the female leads in your stories tend to be the stronger of the genders. Is that a
Oh
safe
yeah.
assumption?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Both the heroine and the villains alike.
No, for sure. So where does that strength come from? You have a strong ties with like maybe the females of your family, and were they strong for you growing up?
Yeah, I grew up with all females in the household, so I had a lot
Okay.
to learn,
No,
definitely.
for sure. And that so it certainly correlates to your stories of them being strong, you know. And I like that idea as well because you see some stories like rescue stories, like the women are like damsels in distress and they can't
Mm.
fend off a freaking fly on their nose. So I do like the idea that there's power in the female leads that you create. It is also like a reflection of your upbringings and the strong women that you grew up around. But man, so I'm gonna pivot really quick because I do want to
Mm.
talk also about your culinary arts style. You have mentioned you were on the Food Network for 10 years, and many people whom I would imagine are into that world would love to hear your experience and how you even got into that field, if you don't mind breaking that
Yeah,
down.
sure. I got into it kind of, it just kind of fell into my lap, so to speak. So, back in like 2006, I met my now husband back then, 20 years ago, pretty much. And he was into the culinary arts. And, just one day he said he was going on Food Network. And I said, cool, like, good luck. He came back a winner. And the next time that they asked him out, he asked me if I wanted to be his assistant. So, he basically trained me for 2 weeks. And the first cake I made was on national television competition. So.
That's awesome. Is that viewable? Can we find it somewhere?
I'm sure there's clips floating around somewhere.
Yeah.
Some of the ones you'll find will be one called Extreme Urban Legend Cakes, where we had
Mhm.
to make an urban legend themed cake, and I actually created the world's first animatronic talking cake.
That is crazy cool, man. That's awesome. What I gotta do is I gotta somehow find some clips of that and see if I don't get a copyright strike and like flash it over so people can see your work and see. I'll do the same with your horror stories as well. Now, to kind of pivot back, right? I know we're kind of going back and forth because you're a man of many talents. But for your written work. Are
Hmm.
there any plans, since you have such a background in writing in different genres and in different formats, ever consider writing for movies?
Oh, absolutely. That's the dream. It's kind of hard field to get into, but my hopes are, my next step. I've published all my books independently, so my next step is trying to get a traditional publishing deal in the next coming years. So I am steadily writing. I have about 3 projects going on right now, aside from what I do on social media and everything else.
Oh, good. That's another thing too that I noticed that you're very much engaged with your audience through social media, and you always just look like you're having a good time. And I know that social media can like paint the image that, hey, everybody's life is perfect. And I know that's not like a
Mm.
reality, but it certainly does, speak to your character and your upbringings, and that you can control what you want people to see. And for what you have on yours is all love, is all positivity, and it's all creative work that you have on there. And I really can appreciate going onto social media, which I don't frequent often, but when I do, you never know what you're going to get. But you can
Sure.
almost rest assured that a lot of times it's negative. So when I come across pages such as yours, and it's just happy and smiles and having a good time and just wanting to positively impact it. So I certainly appreciate that, and I'm sure other people do. But my question is regarding social media is how has social media really helped you build a brand as an author?
So it's definitely helped me grow in terms that way because I connect with people that I would never meet on a daily basis, or I try
Mhm.
to anyway. Especially, the horror community on social media is huge. Readers, writers, you can kind of communicate with who you want to, and you can kind of cater certain content towards certain fields. And I try to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, because I'm like you said, I'm a person of different talents, but also I enjoy a plethora of different things. I'm not just like horror 24/7.
Oh, for sure. So, what are some other genres that you are of interest to you?
As far as like movies, TV shows, anything goes, I really love a good comedy. I don't think they make comedies the way they used to anymore. I think, we took a step back and try to make everything safe and cater to specific audiences a certain way. And I think that kind of takes away from the creativity of everything.
No, for sure. No, I agree with you. When you kind of put shackles onto something and you want it to move in the way that you want it to move, it definitely can like remove the not just the authenticity of the content, but it can also like really be it can really constrict your creativity, and you always are like subconscious about or self-conscious about like is this going to be acceptable? Is this okay? Is this a little too edgy? I don't know. And
Hmm.
I'm not a comedian. I'm not in that world, but I certainly can appreciate a good comedy show. And it's even thinking about comedy from what it was in like the early '90s to what it is currently. It's a different world,
Oh
and
yeah.
times are always evolving. But that speaks to what your work reflects that of evolution. And so, with having so many talents, right? How do you actually manage to find time to dive into these different skill sets that you have?
Well, I think focusing on one thing can be very beneficial.
Mhm.
When I was trying to finish my series, that's pretty much all I concentrated on. Every morning I'd wake up and I'd write 1,000 words before work. I'd come home, write 1,000 words after work. And then, you have your manuscript, and the editing process is another beast. So you gotta have kind of razor sharp focus at that point when you want to get something done.
No, for sure. Now, do you hire different editors? Do you have a dedicated editor, or do you do your own editing? How does that look for you?
It's a bit of everything. So I do use, programs like Grammarly to kind of go through it once and find those, grammar mistakes that we often miss because
Hmm.
we're so excited about the story and you just gonna get your ideas out on page. But I do have an editor that, goes through everything, and then I have a proofreader, and then at the end of the day, I have the final say because, when you self-publish, that's the beauty of it. You can say, this is my stamp of approval, and off it goes.
No, that's true. Very, very much the truth, and many reasons as to why people decide to go the self-published route versus track published route because of the lack of constraints. It works for some people, some it doesn't. But I can imagine, with given what you write and the pace that you write at, it might be hard for a traditional publisher to keep up with the ideas and how much you want to put out back to back to back. So no, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. It all comes down to controlling your voice, and sometimes when you go through a machine, your voice might get lost in the sauce, man. To put it quite
Yeah.
clearly. But so, what are you working on next? What's your next project?
My next project is basically like my first adult horror novel because my series is catered towards young adult. Um, I don't want to spoil too much because it's in the very first few stages, but
Oh.
it's this idea I came up with lately because I've been writing short microfiction for my social media accounts. And one piece that I wrote was from the point of view of the house itself. So it's observing everything that's happening with the people inside of it. Um, And that story kind of evolved into something bigger. And I'm really excited for it because I'm kind of putting in a lot of personal things about like my childhood and through these characters, point of view.
Yeah, no, for sure. So when it comes to releasing your books, obviously there is that for horror books, there is that golden time of October, but it doesn't have to be that way. So for you, have you
Mhm.
released all of your books around like the spooky season, or do you have like a set time during the year that you're like, you know what, I'm gonna shoot for this?
All of them were released around September or October because it takes me about a solid year to go through, beginning to end. So I give
Mhm.
myself that to also give myself leeway where like if I have to step back for a week or two, it's not like, oh, my deadline's like looming.
No, for sure, and I'm sure you found a lot of success with that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it pays off to write horror around, spooky season, but you're also, competing with hundreds of others releasing
Yeah.
everything around spooky season.
No, for sure, for sure. But as long as you have your audience, and I think that is kind of the struggle that occurs when it goes to the holiday time frames and when people release their books, or even when they market their books again. It's coming up time of that year. Hey, I got a book out that I launched like 2 years ago. This is around the time. But then you got those publishing houses that market their big time horror books or their holiday books around the holidays, and then it just becomes a bit of a who's going to grab what. So I think at that point in time, it becomes more important to just you have your audience loves your books and see how they can gravitate and like spread the word. But no, good on you.
Hmm.
It is it's there's no risk, there's no reward if there's no risk, and um I definitely think that the horror season time, everybody's in the mood, everybody's getting excited. It's time to see what we're going to do. But I'm curious, right, with your horror books, and I'll just ask you a few more questions before I let you go.
Yeah.
But do you have difficulties killing off anybody in your stories? If
No,
you do kill off people, okay, okay.
no.
Like, let's see. Man, I don't want you to give away spoilers, but if you could describe, right, like some like clever ways that you kill off your characters.
I mean, one of the best ways I killed somebody was by trapping them in their own vehicle and setting it on fire.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
yeah,
So people, viewers, let me just say this: it is okay to talk about stuff like this in the confines of books. He's not actually murdering people in real
yeah.
life. It's creative stuff, and people kill their characters all the time. I'm just curious in terms of like the mindset of when it comes to horror, because like horror to me, when it comes to just storytelling, is how how scary is it, but how gruesome is it at the same time, and how creative can people get without it being like an old school 80s slasher movie like Jason Voorhees going in there
Yeah.
and using the machete, like how can you get creative in it and make it. And I like the idea of like torment in the characters because you can bring almost psychological warfare, you
Hmm.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that kind of your
Yeah.
style as well?
Yeah, it's for me the most horrible part is what people do unto each other versus like what the monster does to people, right? So,
Yeah.
that torture leading up to that moment where they either live or die, that's the horrifying part in,
Yeah.
my stories. It's like you've already done all these things to them. Like, are you gonna let them live or are you just gonna, cut them loose and put them out of their misery, so to speak?
Yeah, yeah, and you're making that transition from young adult to full on adult horror. So I'm interested in like in hearing how easy of a transition, if it will be easy for you, which I'm sure it will. I'm sure, right? Like in writing young adult horror, were there moments where, oh man, I don't know if this is young adult or if this is adult, like comes out
Yeah.
in your story?
Yeah, absolutely. So, because of the nature of that specific series, the first book is probably the more tender coming of age story for the character. And as she progresses, things just get, more serious for her. Her problems just kind of grow to an unexpected level. So I do put her through the ringer, and I made her go from like being this tender young adult into a full-fledged woman without anything to lose.
That's awesome, man. So one of my last questions is, obviously I know where I met you, right? I met you through Instagram, but are you willing to share where people can find you? And if so, what are those social media handles that you
Sure.
have?
Yeah, so my Instagram is at author Miguel Garcia. I'm also on Twitter at MiggyG1. That's MIGGYG1. And TikTok also at author Miguel Garcia. And you can find my books currently through Amazon. I'm looking into going into Barnes and Noble and other places so that people have options when it comes to looking for my books.
Very good. And are there moments where you do book signings, or is that coming in the future?
Yeah, I attend author events regularly. So usually I'll do street fairs. I try to focus on, local events here in South Florida. But I have gone all the way up to Daytona. I've also gone up to Gainesville. So I do try to mingle with, the writing community quite a bit.
Oh, good for you. And I know you had mentioned too that the horror is pretty big. Like at least the community that you're with on social media is really big. And so I encourage everybody to find your community, whether it's in person or it's online or maybe a hybrid of both, and just expand your horizon and expand your reach. Man, one last question before I let you go out of here is any advice that you have for the younger generation of writers who are just wanting to get their foot in the door and get started with telling a story?
Sure. So one thing that I see writers getting hung up about is this realistic, right? So what I always tell young authors is that you can write anything you want as long as it makes sense within the scope of the world you've created.
Mhm.
So, take that for what it is, because you really can. You can give somebody, you just gotta get the setup correct. If you want, your finale to be this, the setup has to always be leading towards that finale. If not, it comes out of nowhere and you kind of lose your target audience.
Right there. And once you lose your target audience, you lose them and they close that book and they move on to the next and they never
Yeah.
come back. And so, yeah, grab a hold of their attention and do what you can to not misguide them. But hey, I appreciate you coming on, Miguel, and thank you so much for your time and for doing this. Coordinating this with me earlier in the week just for us to do this. So, hey, that's all I got for you all. I'll make sure that Miguel's contact information that he left for his social media handles and his links to his books are going to all be in the description of this video and the audio recording of this video as well. So, hey, thank you all so much for taking the time out of your day to tune into today's episode. I will catch you next time. You all take care.